You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Jam right there.
It's a good intro song.
Hi everybody, we're here to show you what opposites, like an example of opposites, just like an electric company or whatever, like long hair, short hair.
Yes.
Someone that can do makeup properly, someone who has no makeup on. Things that are alike, love comics.
Yes, very much
So much. You have better like fashion sense than I do. So hi, I'm Miss Jen, and this is Liam.
Hello.
And we both love comic books very much. We're at Space Cadets Collection, which is in the Houston, Texas area. And this is Minute To Skim It, which is a sweet little review show that we've been doing since time immemorial. We love doing it. We've been trying to do a lot of like kind of letting you see point of view of parts of the staff. So that's why you've been seeing like Jenna show up, that or traveling or things that are going on. Liam's done an amazing job, and then occasionally see Shanice. So we're trying to give you different points of view about the books instead of just me, which I don't know. It helps a little bit because if you like the things that I've been telling you that I like, then you get to know a little bit about our personalities, and you can kind of take recommendations from us, and then get with your LCS and make sure you get it put into your poll box. We do it tonight, so that you have a chance to do that. Have tonight and then tomorrow morning you can go wait in line, I guess, if your LCS is a wait in line kind of place. Or if they have enough people to be able to do this, you can call tonight and say, hey, I heard this book is the jam. All right, so let's get going for reviews. I don't know, we're pretty even this week.
Yeah, honestly.
There's been, in the past, we've been like real. I tend to be a read heavy person. Like I try to use every second of reading.
And you read more source point and mainstream than I did.
Here's Josh Went with his happy We need to figure out some vowels for this, Josh.
There just mean like an A and E something there.
Dibbin Cabid. We call it Dibbin Cabid today. All right. For all of my good friends out there who have been supporting Source Point and Dr. Christie and Garrett Gunn Wallace, this is volume 2 of Good Boy, the second issue. So when last we saw Flint and his group, Flint had been taken by Abraham, which is kind of like gray dog with dreads, takes him to kind of like this hideout in the forest. It looks like it's a place for, like government assassins go to like chill. Oh. Especially if they're on the run from, they're at the end of their workable life, and they're like, we should just kill that guy. The vowels would just make it longer. I just mean for like pronunciation, because there's already the U's in between there, E's. So in this one, the end of last issue under attack, and Abraham had been shot. Oh. So this kind of like plays through what's going on there, and then we continue to further the story, which they kind of like casually drop things in there, which I don't know if it's surely can't be an accident. The people know what they're doing when they're writing this book, but they just make a kind of a random drop about where is John? Well, John's dead, so now I want to know, is John dead? Really?
I'm
I hope there just is a big playthrough where they're like make everyone believe that he's dead.
I feel like that would be a good twist, though, that he's not actually dead, it was just a cover-up. I feel like that would be, especially with how the storyline has been going, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, and truly, Dave Lentz needs to have some kind of a because, like there's sometimes when you're reading a comic book, and here's my two school of thoughts about lettering for comic books.
Yeah.
There are letterers in comic books that you notice the letters that
Oh, yeah.
are another character in the book. You're like, wow, this is like really like in curse words. And there's other ones where, boom and bam and all that stuff is super important for the story. And you come out of the story a little bit to see the difference in the lettering.
And I appreciate that. It's good on like character differentiation because sometimes I get confused by who's speaking because they're all the same font.
Yes, and you'll see that with from Marvel.
Yeah.
When Thor talks, it's always in a specific font.
Oh yeah,
so you can totally follow him.
Oh yeah, that's what I love.
And then for like the regular comic book that's not trying to do that, there's just a very standard thing that looks for all the world like someone just went in and typed it in a computer, but it's totally not what's going on. So it's actually hand lettering that stuff.
Oh, I love
and
that.
And that's a whole new skill where it just looks perfect.
That's like I always love whenever writers do that. Like no matter what media it is, like if it's a completely different font, it's just I don't know. It's not immersive. That's not the word, but like it definitely brings me more into the story because then I understand I can connect more with the character because I know that there's separation of character and like there's actually like somebody's in the background taken care of and cares about like how somebody is differentiating characters. I don't know. It's nice. I even like that in novel form too.
There's a lot of thought process put in there. And I'm sure a little bit's been kind of like directed by whoever the writer is.
Yeah.
I like it. Let letters do whatever they want.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Then I'm gonna knock out the top row. So this guy, there's something wrong with Patrick Todd. It was so good. I'm very excited to see where they're gonna go with this series. Because
I cannot tell at all from that cover what genre we're doing.
So, main character has mind control powers, from what I have gathered.
Okay.
And from what it seems like, because the way that he controls minds is sort of like hypnosis, like the way that it acts. So the very first page is this dude who's robbing a bank. And is asking about like the ink packs because they'll explode once they pass a certain vicinity. The ink pack explodes and he's like, I wish that didn't happen. And then he continues and doesn't acknowledge the rest of it. And apparently this kid hunts down predators and controls does mind control. Like he goes on forums of how to catch a predator kind of things.
He finds like
child predators.
People trying to do pedophilia.
Yeah. He's doing it for a kind of good reason, I guess. Because he makes the guy go turn himself in and all that stuff, and the guy has no recollection of what happened. I'm assuming that they're teasing the fact that he used his powers on his mom. To a point that her brain is kind of mush. Like she very much looks like a old school lobotomy victim. And I don't know where they're gonna go with that storyline, but that's how it feels like it's being set up. There's like a little bit at the end. There's like two pages of a intake form because she's in an institution. Of her intake and how they've done like medical scans and like CAT scans. This takes place in 2019, which was interesting to me, right? It's just I can't say much because it'll spoil like most of the story, but it's one of those that I feel like they used mind control as a trope really well. Because sometimes it can be a bit passé. It can be a bit like heavy on the trope of like, I can control minds. It's very much like he's using it just to get by. And he's not using it for his own gain, but he's using it for like to survive and to help his mom. Because
that's different.
Yeah, and like dad's very absent. He's not saying, he just says that his dad's working long hours, but dad's not present. And he's using his dad as like a cover, I guess, of just like, yeah, my dad can't do this, or my dad's working long nights, and he uses it for his own gain, which is very interesting to me. I don't know.
Oh, I need to read this. Of
It's
course, it's
good.
Aftershock, so I need to read all of it.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I feel like you would enjoy it.
I'm still mad because the 2 astronaut-based ones
Yeah.
came out like 3 weeks ago, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't read them. I just need to put them in my pile to take home and read because I know I would love them because they're my genre.
I feel like you would love Astronaut Down because I read the 2nd issue.
Yep, that's what I want.
Yeah, and I feel like you would love it. I wasn't a huge fan of Where Starships Go to Die, but I feel like it's definitely up your alley though.
I'm gonna give them a chance.
Yeah.
This is a reminder, like when you get to your LCS and you're like, okay, well there aren't many books in my pull box. This is like a huge opportunity to be able to just wander around the floor and
Yeah.
say, what would I have not normally picked up?
I mean,
I want to try out.
that's how I found I Hate Fairyland. To be fair, yeah. I just saw it and I was like, this looks like my cup of tea, and now I fall in love with the series.
Josh, that is a really good question.
Hmm.
The all caps versus lowercase. I will tell you for myself, I am fine with either one as long as it makes sense for the character.
Yeah.
Like cutesy characters, I think should always be all lowercase kind of thing. Like it kind of like helps you understand the kind of like the or simple characters, I
Yeah.
guess. And then like if you have big all caps, that's really for like you really have to use that sparingly. Like characters that are like always kind of like need to be loud in your
Yeah.
face. But for me, my biggest pet peeve is truly the if the lettering feels like someone truly like typed it out on a
Yeah.
like a font whatever, and then like just fit it into the bubble because you can so tell those, and it
kind of gross.
distracts
looking.
me.
Yeah.
detracts. I don't know if you guys are the same way. It doesn't happen very often. It was very common in the 90s
Yeah.
when there were like computer font like or comic font generators you could use for that
Yeah.
stuff. And people thought it was super awesome if you didn't have a letterer to do that. But
Yeah.
I think people realize that letterers really are a super high skill that
Oh,
you
yeah.
cannot replace with a computer. This is my own personal experience. And yes, my goal is to find a comic book that we can, when it gets typed, fills up the entire bottom of the screen.
Oh yeah.
All right. What you talking? Trying to attack me. I see how I draw those tombstone. Okay. If you have never ever been a Batman person, you don't ever think you'll be a Batman person. There's no chance you'll ever be a Batman person. I double dog dare you to go get this Chip Zdarsky
Mm-hmm.
Batman 125. Because, oh, heck yeah. Okay. So things that are Easter eggy,
Oh.
which I thought they were going a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and they may or may not have gone that way.
Oh.
At the very opening of the book, they have Alfred in the Batcave, right?
Of course.
Pretty typical.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're saying it's a while ago.
Yeah.
And then they have that kind of like, there's some kind of buzz or ring in the cave wall,
Oh.
which anyone that read Doomsday Clock knows where that starts, what storyline that starts.
Mhm.
So it starts leading your brain down that path. But they also throw other stuff in there. They deal with a lot of past pain for Batman, including losing one of his former Robins. It does take place in normal continuity. This one really does focus in on a new battle of the wills, I guess, or smartnesses or whatever between him and the Penguin, which I've always really liked that bad guy. And it is Zdarsky, so you know it's really well written. There's been tons of really great Batman writers, and I've enjoyed every single one of them for what they've brought to it. But there's just something about the way Zdarsky writes that makes me care more about all letters, bad or good.
Yeah.
So that's my personal opinion about Batman. And I will tell you, I am not really a DC reader normally.
Yeah.
I'll read it for review, or there are a few titles that I will follow, like anything Ron B writes. I know I'll like when Tom King was on Batman. I totally love that. So sometimes I find myself, and this was a discussion that was being had on the internet today, actually. When do we make the crossover from 90s when most people followed artists.
Yeah.
Like your favorite, if someone said, what's your favorite book? You'd say it's Jim Lee's Man or it's McFarlane's Spider-Man. So you followed a specific, I mean, other than Claremont, you like kind of, you know, he kind of broke the mold. But recently, I don't know if many people would be able to tell you who the artist is on their favorite books, that they are more likely to be able to tell you who their favorite writers are and where they're following them into their titles. So I'm interested to see what you guys say about that. Are you following creators that are artists that are like the art pencil inks and that kind of stuff? Are you following the writers? Those are your primary place to follow? So
you know that I lose my mind over Scott Young. Anything Scott Young. I love his art. I love his story writing. That says a lot because I haven't been reading Twig. I just haven't been a fan of it. I don't know.
Yeah, that is something that I've also noticed. That I like the first issue, but I haven't gone back to the other ones. I don't know what that means about me or the product.
Like I started reading it and I got halfway through and I was like, this doesn't feel like Scott Young's usual stuff. I'm just not going to keep reading this. And I feel bad because I love his stuff. And he's the only writer that I know the name of directly.
I think it's because it's the first stuff he's done that's like mostly sweet. It doesn't have the things like F Fairyland.
Yeah.
It's more like his other work with the boy and his Talking Fox, Middle West.
Yeah. That's something I do need to start, though. Mm-hmm. Well, then we can both do Starhenge since we both read it.
Okay. I will tell you what has going on with Starhenge. So Liam Sharp did this entire book. So in this case, it doesn't matter whether you choose a writer or an artist because you get both. And Liam contacted me pretty early on in the process for them getting people excited about this book. So I for me, if a creator contacts me directly and asks me, please consider my work, then I have a more connectedness to it. Yeah. So having said that, what did you think about the book?
I loved it. I am currently writing my memoir. This gives a little bit of context. The way that he wrote anything in this is how I've been writing. It feels like I try to write as a conversation and make it feel human, less so of these are facts. Here is, and I guess I'm trying to think of what the term is, exposition.
Sure.
Yeah. And I enjoy that thoroughly, and just the randomness and the harshness of this. There's a scene on the ship that's very much like, hey, do you want to do the do with me? And I'm like, okay. Very straightforward. And I was like, oh, okay, that's so random, but I found it very entertaining. It was just super just out there, and I was like, it's really funny because they were both robots, and I was like, oh, what? The art in it was beautiful. It was very obvious, you can tell it was pastel and charcoals, and that's not a medium that's used enough, and it needs to be used a lot more. And it was just such a I took notes. It explains exoplanets, which are planets in the Milky Way galaxy that are habitable for humans. And going into that, I already knew what an exoplanet was, but they do explain it if you didn't know what that was initially, which I appreciate, because I feel like a lot of stories like that just give you this information and don't explain it any further. They just assume that you already know. And I love that. They also made a Rush reference.
I missed the Rush reference.
It was a 2112. They said it directly in it. They said it like the Rush album.
Did it mention Rush? Okay, I'm
yeah, it's at the very bottom. Yeah. Let me see.
The thing about the art was it took me a second to like it. It is very beautiful. But it actually gave me a little bit of flashback to, I don't know if you guys remember this, in the mid to late 90s, there was this kind of movement to make things digitally, but the art itself felt very, until it is, okay. It felt very, I don't know, not real, very artificial, I guess. And this moves away from that very quickly, but it took me a half a second to get over it. It more for a while, like the style like Giger.
Yeah.
It was just like it's organic but technical. I will say don't read it quickly because I was forced to read it quickly. I don't think I liked it nearly as much as I wanted to like it because there was so much kind of like background history of characters and things and places, and like it starts out with this whole history bit, and I tend to, I don't know, my brain tends to just cycle through that really quickly, and so then if it's important to the story, then it gets lost to me. So that's my fault.
I read it. We had the complete opposite. I tried to knock out like all the bigger books first, so I could like thoroughly enjoy it, because the big ones you have time to read, which I've noticed that. And I spent probably like 20 minutes reading this, just intaking all of it. And I think that's why like I loved it. I feel like if you have time to like sit down and like thoroughly enjoy it, I feel like it's definitely worth the reread and just to intake all the information, because there's a side story going on, and what I'm assuming is the exoplanet that they're investigating. It's a really good side story though. Like it was a really good parallel story that I loved. I loved it so much. That's all I can say. Because it felt real. Like I felt like it could be actually a conversation that's happening between a couple.
That's good.
Yeah. I loved it.
Right, Jay gave an answer. Said I like to follow everyone on a certain project. Like Good Boy, that entire creative team is amazing, and so is Pocus Hocus. So I understand that. And then Josh says it's a long and interesting conversation to have. I think it switched with Bendis and the Quesada era at Marvel. Yeah, writers came back into the driver's seat. Yeah, and I don't think it's really changed back. So I don't know if it will. Surely, if we have enough time, then that will happen. And then Pablo thinks that no one forces me to read quickly, probably except for myself.
I have noticed a weird generational thing since working here, that whenever people like older, I guess like an older generation of comic creators come in, they ask immediately for the artist, and then the younger like range of like my age range and his age range, they ask immediately for the writers. And I've noticed that like huge difference. I'm like, I don't know who this is, who's the writer? And they're like, here it is, I guess. But
all right. Amazing Spider-Man #5. This one continues, of course, right away from where the last one is. This series has been incredibly popular. Like they've done a few extra prints of #1, 2, and 3, I think. Oh, wow. I don't know if all of them have come out or not. I think that we have almost nothing on the rack. So people like even as far as 4 have been going back and re-picking up the series, because this series picks up basically after the end of the main gigantic long run, where the apex of the story was the Beyond storyline, where Ben Reilly and Peter Parker find themselves like embroiled in this whole like master corporation that has the rights to Spider-Man. Ends up turning out interestingly for both characters, and so this is following Pete's character. As there is this big vacuum or competition for power in the city because Kingpin is no more. So Tombstone and the Rose and some other characters are really kind of like trying their, to make their way in the world. And what's interesting here is that one of the characters, I won't tell you which one because it messes it up, is actually working with Peter.
Oh.
Which if they find out will probably be bad, but it's kind of interesting to see that kind of stuff happen. It's either Peter or Ben that he's working with, but both of them are in play. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between them because, unless the art's very distinctive, it's hard to tell unless they say Pete or Ben.
Like, I've been wanting to start the Amazing Spider-Man series just because I grew up with Spider-Man. It was like my first conscious hero that I ever started following.
You'll probably be good. We're at 5, so number 6 will come out, and then they'll make a trade for you, and that's where I would jump in.
That's perfect then.
Where's Paste Pot Pete when you need him? Well, that is an alliterative name if there ever was one. Your turn.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with my management. So Jen actually walked in as I was halfway through reading this, and I have notes for days. So I am
This is
huge.
Second series. You may not know
Yes.
this. This is the second series. I mean, remember Mind Management came
Yeah.
out. I think they're actually making. He's been posting up on his page like
Mm.
giant, beautiful omnibuses. So if
Yeah.
you need one, you should go get one.
Oh, definitely. Because I heard about it, what was it, last year, I think? I heard about it briefly, just very like surface level, just like, this is a book. And I was like, okay. And then I read this, and I love conspiracy theories. Like, I have been known to go months on end. My YouTube just recommended all just icebergs, conspiracy theories. Love them.
Did you say icebergs?
So it's like a tier of just like, it goes farther and farther down into like borderline red yarn kind of stuff. Yeah. I have gotten close to like Sylvia Pepe, like just corkboard kind of thing with a couple of conspiracies. And this thing, it works really well with acknowledging like some of the aspects of MK Ultra, which was back in like for like 20 years the CIA experimented with people. This is public information. They used LSD as to experiment with mind control. And they acknowledge a little bit of it in this, which was really interesting.
It's legit, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it's a
actual
real
government
thing.
stuff. This is
Yeah.
not like, oh, this is a fun storyline. They actually did those things. They
Yeah.
also did remote viewing, which I think they still do. They said they stopped doing it whenever, but
That's a lie. That's a whole lie. But like it was interesting because like I feel like they are also touching on like the joke of the birds work for the bourgeoisie, so like all the birds were spies. It's one of those weirdest conspiracy theories that I just make a joke about. But they do acknowledge like subliminal messaging, like they boldly acknowledge it. And people don't really talk about that. That's subliminal messaging. It's a real thing. Like the CIA touched on it initially with MK Ultra, but like they blatantly talk about it in this. And I thought it was really good. Like I think it takes place in like 100 years in the future, I think. And
I mean, trying to work for those guys. They got their chance.
But the pages feel like soft sandpaper. That's the only way that I can describe it.
That's good paper.
And it's on purpose, I'm pretty sure. It's to make you feel uneasy. And the whole storyline that if you don't follow conspiracy theories as heavily as I do, it make you feel uncomfortable. And that was the whole point. And I loved that. The whole test was like, it was just good. Like if you like conspiracy theories, go with it.
There you go. Josh has given you a recommendation that I would have given you.
I have been wanting to read Department of Truth, but we don't have volume 1.
Are you really not?
No.
You sure it's not a giant pile of them over on the big tables?
I can go check,
because I'm pretty sure I have this many of them.
Well, because Department of Truth started, or was in like the beginning stages when I got hired. But we didn't have volume 1 even then, and I was looking for volume 1 long before I even brought in my resume. We didn't have it.
Let me go look at it. I'm pretty sure it's on the master table that's over there by the pizzeria.
Then I'll have to look for it because I've been wanting to start it for months.
Hey Kenneth, I want to say hi. And the Experience producers are giving us an amazing recommendation. There's 2 parts to this. One is that Matt is amazing, and his Exo Man of War series is one that people should go back and read if they weren't forced by me to read it already. Because I will give you all your money back if you can read that series and dislike it. If you're like, this is no place in my life.
Oh, wow.
It's that good. And the other thing you need to know is that there's an Exo Man of War that's coming out soon that I have seen the art for, and it is going to make your brain hurt. It's so good, even though already the art in Valiant is over the top beautiful. And I've got a top secret cover. It's coming out, so keep your eyes peeled.
That has been recommended to me by somebody who I told them that I've been wanting to start Department of Truth, and they were like, you need to start Exo Man of Wars. And I was like, oh, okay then. But
follow all of Jenna's recommendations for Valiant, because she has read everything. And there's so much good stuff in there. I don't think people realize how good 99% of Valiant is. Because people look at it and go, oh, it's a superhero universe. I don't want that.
Oh, yeah.
They should ignore all of their normal, like, anything that's not Marvel or DC and is kind of superhero-ish I shouldn't like.
Oh, that's why I go with indie so much.
All All right, and you said that, but then you watched The Boys, right? See,
I haven't The Boys yet. Actually.
Oh Lord, you have to watch it. I feel like you're totally old enough to do it, but I feel like no, I shouldn't talk to you about it.
Oh.
All right, this is the Oblivion Trials. This is another Source Point Press book. I really liked it. It's about a guy who, in my brain, looks like he dies twice, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and look at it more carefully. But it's all of the colorways and the art are this, where they're kind of like bright pastels, like neon, I guess neons you would call that. And in this one, he finds himself in a situation where he looks like he passes over into death. I'll let you discover all of the how.
Yeah.
And Oblivion is a place where he doesn't really want to go.
Oh.
And so he's offered by death, like traditional death.
Yeah.
Looks like death guy.
Yeah.
The opportunity to do the trials to go to somewhere else. And it's interesting how they tell him what like the bad things that might happen. I kind of figure if you're already dead and they're already telling you you're going to like the not great place, what would be the drawback to actually doing the trials? But then you think to yourself, always there's a twist. There always could be something worse, I guess.
It reminds me of Dante's Inferno. That's like the way that you're describing it just feels like a surface level of like a base level explanation of what Dante's Inferno truly is, along with Paradiso and Purgatory.
All right, Pablo, send me some food over, please.
That's actually sounds like a really cool storyline though. Like I wish that it was worked with a bit more. Like,
and it's not, and that's kind of the opposite of Starhenge, where Starhenge is like very word heavy, and you need to set aside a half an hour to really enjoy and get everything out of it. The Oblivion Trials is a much faster read. It's kind of like what I call when I talk about books, when it's like when you need to have like a real like sit down meal, or if you just need to have like
a
quick lovely meal. It's like it's.
Then I need to check that out then, because I've been needing to check out a lot more Source Point lately. Okay, then I'm gonna go with Promethee.
It was really sad that Liam chose this one, but I like Liam a lot, so let him do it.
What did I do? It
has a blood red moon. I am a fan of everything eschatology, which is end times, so that's why it's hard for me to let you read it.
I mean, it is because the 1313 is related to Revelations of the prediction of death. Well, because so the main character is a soothsayer, future predictor person, but the only time that she can see the future and predict the future is when she's not taking her antipsychotics, which I have been on the ones that she was prescribed very briefly.
Are you able to tell the future?
No, but I couldn't tell what was happening actively in my life, so
the future is inconsequential.
Basically, yeah. But whenever she's not taking the medication, she can see the future. She is at this like UFO panel whenever she like goes down and starts having like I guess she just blacks out and starts telling the future. Like there's this whole group of people who are there's like a whole side of like NASA that's like preparing for the apocalypse. And she thinks that the apocalypse isn't actually happening. She thinks it's just a psychotic episode. And that it's
hiding that from myself. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's just I just can't say much because it'll spoil the entire story.
I'm down with that when you just can't say a thing.
Oh yeah, like it's beautiful. And like the side of NASA that they work with, they even mention Area 51, and they say that they're all based in like they have their own opinions that are very based in fact, but they don't want to agree with it because they're all nut jobs.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, I feel like I would love it.
Amazing. Okay. Carnage number 4, I think, is amongst the books that have introduced new things this week. It continues on with that main storyline where Cletus Cassidy is actually separate from Carnage, the suit. And Cletus has instead gotten himself somehow inside the brain of a normal looking human being. Okay. So I think, so Carnage is running around with a human being that he's not on. I think that guy's a reporter or something. I can't remember.
Mhm.
And then you've got it's a good thing the other guy that looks human looks crazy, of course, because he's also got Cletus in his head.
Yeah.
And that's really I'm going to tell you about this one.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's written by Ron B. So you know.
So Astronaut Down. This is how you make an issue too. It gives you base background. It's Astronaut Down. I think I mentioned that. It gives you base background on the main characters, like history. Like he has a wife. It's focusing with that. It's not really focusing with anything else that was established in the first issue, but that's more of a background in this. And it at first I thought it was like like the virus existing on Earth, but it's not. It's just his day off, and it's his day off from training. But it doesn't really allude to that until the very end. And it is establishing like how everybody is in a dome to protect themselves from the outside world. And there's a lot more going on with the experiment that he's now involved in than anybody is alluding to, like at all. Like the very last panel, I can't say anything because it just spoils the entire book. But like the scientists are doing stuff that they're not letting the public or the people who are being experimented on know. And I'm assuming the way that they were explaining it is that the virus is a heavily mutated version of cancer. And it's
for people that like that kind of book, also pick up The Clock by Matt Hawkins, image book.
Yes. That's actually something I've been wanting to start, but I don't.
That's about weaponizing cancer.
Oh, I love that. That's a weird like type of story that I love.
It's weird because the book came out 1 and 2, I think, were released as single issues, and then they were like, it was middle of COVID.
Yeah.
Which is also terrifying because it was kind of because the way the book was laying out, it was kind of like, oh my gosh,
it's a weird timing. Yeah.
But then they went straight to trade. So
yeah. But
don't make yourself crazy looking for 3, 4, 5, and 6 single issues because you're not gonna find them.
No, it's too late. I'm not going to. No, I'm just kidding. But no, definitely check it out if you like biowarfare. It's great. So what do you have next?
Biowarfare. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
No, how to transition from that.
I love giving positive reviews, but sometimes I just gotta be like,
you just gotta be honest.
I don't know what I read.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can appreciate it for what it is. But I also feel like I needed to have a lot longer with this book.
Yeah.
This is Knights of the Fifth Dimension. This is out of Blue Juice Comics, which I adore. And this one has Walt Flanagan working on it, of course. But this one kind of feels like they were like, hey, let's get together a bunch of storyline that kind of jumps around a little bit and different art styles. And one of the art styles needs to be exactly Jack Kirby art style. And a matter of fact, let's put Jack Kirby in the book. And they do. They don't call him Jack Kirby, but and bring in characters that look like existing characters in the old school universe. Like you can recognize what these things are supposed to be. There's that's like Kazar. Oh gosh, I forgot what this dude's name is. And so just like this, they have a character called this J scratch through line 316. It's so funny. J and there's a robot. John 316 is one of the robots. So it's an interesting look when they just took a bunch of characters that are like, oh look, there's a bunch of old characters. We're gonna reuse them, not call them what they were, and have them interact together.
Like an homage, sort of, to like the classic comics.
It's almost like it's saying that, like the characters became kind of like are really real in a fifth dimensional world.
I love that.
It seems like a book that Kirby would have written. Honestly, it's truly something. It is, I think, a love poem.
Oh, I want to check that out now. I always love like it's not a love letter, but I always feel I always love like things.
Jack B.
That's always my favorite thing. That was a pseudo love letter. Okay, so the word number 2. I am so excited to see where they're going with this series because I have the first issue I fell in love with. This issue I loved. So from what I have gathered is that it's not in a bubble, it's an underground society. So the humans are not allowed to know about what's happening. And there's the whole story is following the whole main part of the story is following this giant couple that's having a baby in the underground of whatever city they're in. And at the end, because they have to do a cesarean because she can't give birth. So I started crying at some point.
That's a good book if you have actual tears dropping.
It was good. Because the baby loses the pulse and can't breathe. I started straight up almost crying. Like there was tears forming in my eyes, and I think they dropped at one point. The regular urban explorers exist in this universe, like the ones that should have a breaking and entering charge, like those kinds of people. I like urban explorers, but sometimes it's crossing a line.
Mm-hmm.
The giant who's a dad almost kills these two kids. And it's really good. It's it not only brings in cryptids, because I love cryptids.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody at the store has heard how much I love them. That's not exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
But they mention folklore. There's a gelatinous cube at one point, which a lot of people don't talk about. They just use it as a throwaway monster, but it could kill you if it absorbs you and you're in there long enough. And
I can't breathe gelatin, so
I just love gelatinous cubes. There's just something about
say,
them.
right?
I know, there's a company that I follow on Instagram that sells soaps that are literally called gelatinous cubes. And
What do they smell like?
I think there's a cherry blossom one, and they do a watermelon one during the summer.
Okay.
Right?
All right, I gotta pick it up here.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot.
Oh yeah.
We could go forever.
Yes.
All right, this is a tie-in to the Black Adam that released a couple weeks ago. This one is the Justice Society Files Hawkman. So if you're really hoping to have any Black Adam action, it doesn't happen into the backup story that's at the back part. So this one deals more with the Hawkman character himself. He goes to an event where they are displaying kryptonite and the Shazam symbol, which I guess still is powered up, and a bunch of other objects that you'll recognize. And then, it's like any good kind of heist. There's a lot of cross and double cross, and what are they really trying to get at? I'm going to go for this, but I really want that. So that one's really good. And the return of one of my favorite characters of all time. This is Edison, I think Chase. I don't know why I can't remember his last name, but I think it's Dr. Chase. So all you need to know about this character, this is the second series. It's a Mark Millar project. I love Mark Millar stuff, especially when he gets into spycraft. Those are my favorite things that he does. In this case, it is literally, you get to still see Edison is still the main character. He is ultra smart. He can focus on hundreds of things at the exact same time and actually take away all the information that's being given to him. You'll see a little bit how that works for him. He's a super spy, super physical. He's running almost as fast as a cheetah. I know that sounds funny, but it actually gets addressed in this book. And it is him coming up against what it ends up being, you'll see at the very end. It's called the Icarus Society. And I'm not spoiling anything because it's literally the name of the book. And it involves this character that's on the front cover down here. It brings forth the idea that, hey, we always have thought that Edison's always been the smartest and can never have anybody against it. But what if there's an entire society that could maybe best him?
I mean, to be fair, Edison also stole most of the works that he's done. So, I mean, what?
It's not that Edison.
Oh, well, that doesn't change anything about
fine.
history. Okay.
Dr. Chase.
So, Dark Beach, number 4. So, I told Jen this before the show started. I'm not going to stop reading the series just because of this issue, but the art was really jarring. I just felt disconnected. It definitely could have been a volume 2, not a volume 4, because we already have...
Did it change a lot from the last issue?
Yes. Okay. The last issue ended on a cliffhanger. This didn't pick up with the cliffhanger. It picks up It's a prequel to the whole series. So it's explaining like why the girl was found dead, and like all that stuff. But the art style isn't the same at all. It's a completely different art style. There's no character establishment. I was really confused. Like I started reading it and I was like, this is not what am I reading right now?
Mhm.
I'm not gonna read the series. I mean, like this is one single issue, but I feel like if they gave like a bit of a background, or did like a how everything started, like something like that to give like an establishment. But
they needed a recap for this one.
Yeah, like I feel like if they gave a bit more backgrounds and explained where this was, the art style is not even the same as the rest of the series, and the last issue ended on a cliffhanger, and I wanted it to pick up from that cliffhanger, and this would have been good probably like later in the series, maybe a little bit earlier in, but it's issue 4. You can't just give random background in issue 4. We're already like a decent storyline in. You can't just throw prequel at me and expect me to understand what's happening. Like the end of the last issue, the hitman found him, and that was the end. That ended on a cliffhanger, and I wanted it to pick up from there, and it didn't. And I'm like I said, I'm not going to stop reading it, but I personally thought it was a bit jarring, especially with how the storyline's been going. The art in it was a bit disconnected from the rest of the series too. So I wasn't a fan of this one.
Heads up to people that are creating. It's okay if you have to change a creative team.
Yeah.
Just make sure it still makes sense.
Yeah, like it's radically different art, and I was so confused.
All right. What if Miles Morales, number 4, was a little bit controversial because the Miles Thor spoke and behaved in a very urban way, which seemed a little bit put on.
Oh.
So, I took it for what it was, that they wanted to make him very distinctive and different, but I'm sure that they have realized, because it's toned way down in this. I don't know how they could have like done anything in between, but they made it clear at the end of number 4 that the 4 versions of Miles that we have seen from the multiverse now, which is Thor Miles, the Hulk Miles, Captain America Miles, and the Wolverine Miles, are all destined to be in the same storyline. And this is the storyline that they were destined for. And they still have Miles in his cool new costume. So Miles Actual is there. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. They actually bring more than just him from the other dimensions. For him, his kind of like foil is his Uncle Aaron. Mm-hmm. And so there are 4 different versions of Uncle Aaron. That makes sense against the characters that you're seeing here. Yeah. So there is a Loki Aaron, for example. So call him Thiles. There you go. I think it's a fun concept. And then all the rest of them, they've introduced a new character first time they've been out there. And I think number 3, kind of like the value of it went through the roof. So there's that.
Well, then, Nomad is my last one. And Jen actually handed this to me because she thought I would enjoy it. So, it wasn't really my cup of tea. No.
Sorry,
no. Wait, what?
Because the ESP says, we call him Thiles, and that's just Miles who never skips leg day. That's a joke we need to make a shirt for.
I love that. I want that as a sticker on my car. But it was if you put xenomorphs in a Viking-based D&D campaign. That is literally what I wrote in my notes app. I like that occasionally, but I think that's like if I read this probably like 3 or 4 months ago, I would have fallen in love. I might check out the rest of the series just out of curiosity. But it's not gonna immediately be a grab for me. If it comes out as a trade, I'll read it. But I'm just.
And the difference in timing there is that you have been introduced into a bunch of other genres.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's been I have a long to read list. But I'm also just not a huge fan of xenomorphs. We're complete opposites on that. I love Yautjas. So I love predators. It's the name of the race. Yautja.
See, what do I know? That sounds like a Yeti term.
I mean, They're just evolve. I mean, they're if humans evolve to breathe in nitrogen and live in a nitrogen based atmosphere, that's basically what it is.
We breathe more nitrogen than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, that's true, but we don't have a nitrogen based atmosphere. So,
all right, Absolution. This one is really cool. So what this book feels like is doing is it appears that this main character is this female has done something in her past that she now must pay absolution for. Mm-hmm. So it appears that she must go and imagine if you had like snuff films that everyone watched and that they gave you ratings for. Looks like that's what she has to do. And that the audience kind of determines whether she gets closer to her absolution mark or not. And then they can like, oh, she let somebody go, like an innocent go. Well, we're going to take her down. So now it's going to take her forever. And it feels like one of those storylines where, and I think these are always so cool, where you realize at some point it does not really matter what that main character does, that if the audience likes them enough, they will never give them absolution because the audience likes watching them do what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So you can never get out. She isn't.
There's something about like a snuff film storyline that I just love. I want to.
And it's not like Red Room. It's not like where it's just like snuff film. It's for fans of like Duel. If you like the little indie book called Duel, where like the whole world, everyone can be challenged to a duel. If I just felt like, let her duel later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, okay. I guess.
And the main character in that one gets either challenged by or challenges like the top duelist.
Yeah.
Which is dumb. But yeah, that's the way that book starts, which is so cool.
I have
and the other dueler has to actually say yes. There's no way that you can ever say no to a duel.
Then I'm checking this out. That was oh no, that was not your last book, but I'm gonna check after this.
Okay, one last one.
Yeah.
So Mad Cave has got a book called Tiger's Tongue, which they kept on showing me pictures of, and the cover art was kind of putting me off for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's just like it's all tans or something. I could never really tell you. You know, like sometimes you just look at art and you're just like, eh. So I'm here to tell you, don't let the cover art push you off of enjoying a cool book. This really has a lot of kind of like, it takes you back into a people's where there's a child that gets chosen to take on the power. I think the tiger is kind of like their symbol. Takes on the power of maybe the tiger, but of their people. It goes forward generationally and kind of like king or queen or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, the king's wife gives birth to twins. And in this, the twins each have a brown eye and a blue eye, which is kind of cool. And it's the opposite. So they've got...
Oh, I love heterochromia.
Is that what heterochromia?
Yeah.
And so this kind of just is a setup where it appears that one of the twins has already been kind of chosen to be the person. Mm-hmm. And then things happen that are different.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I also have to give you guys a heads up for stuff that's coming out that you should pay attention to. Book of Shadows, we were just talking about Valiant earlier. It is being written by Cullen Bunn, which has written a bunch of other really cool stuff for them. Usually in what they call their dead side. So those are the characters that are kind of like more voodoo or dark magic based. And in this case, it looks like they're focusing in on, that is Punk Mambo. But that is, of course, Shadow Man. I mean, I'm not 100% certain who that is, but it looks a lot like, what's the one that controls electronics? It'll come to me if I stop thinking about it. It looks like weird Geomancer. I don't know why the Geomancer is part of this thing. Although I guess it could be a disguised. There's a couple female characters that are part of the universe that they don't always use. and then I can't remember. This looks like one of the people. Oh, Live Bar, thank you. And that looks like one of the Harbinger folks, but I'm not sure. But oh no, I bet you that's Dr. Mirage. So think about putting that on your polls. It doesn't happen until the end of the month. And they've done big events like this before. One of them was called Book of Death. That was a huge event. But that took place in more, well, I guess it was both. I think it crossed both realms, but that one was a really good series. All right. Is that all of our stuff today? Did we get through it all?
Yeah,
oh, cool.
We took at least one book from each side.
There's a bunch of really cool trades also out this week. Yeah. Definitely go and support your LCS. I know that money is tight and gas is really expensive, and so is like food and that kind of stuff. But man, if you love your LCS and you want them to be around, just try to support them with some kind of purchase this week.
Oh, support small businesses. Yep. If it wasn't for small businesses, I wouldn't be employed. So,
all right, everybody, we love you for joining us and interacting with us on the show. We'll see you guys next week again. Thank you for joining us on The Experience. Stick around. We got some more programming coming up for you. See you later.
Bye.